Hello everybody, welcome back to High Ground. My name is Tanner, and today we're going to be recapping Phase 1 of Stage 1 of Brazil 2023. So I'm really happy that I don't have to say Brasileiro anymore, it is just the Brazil League, and they also split up LATAM in a way that I don't really have to say LATAM anymore. So, it does technically say LATAM here, but it doesn't correspond to the Brazil League the same way it did before. Okay, so not really going to be talking about any regions besides Brazil, EU, and NA for the most part. So again, a lot of other stuff that I could talk about, but no, these are still the three big regions. Until we see big results coming out of the other regions, I don't really intend to do much coverage on them. Okay, so I'm going to go over the rosters really briefly to start off, maybe mention a few of the roster changes, and then we'll look at the results, and we'll look at the bracket that they're going to play soon, just like the other regions will be playing their brackets soon, and then we'll finish off with some stats. So that's sort of the plan here. Mentioning the other regions, EU is finishing up, I think, as I'm recording this, so probably tomorrow I'll do a video on them if you were expecting that. LATAM just finished a little bit earlier, so I'll be going over them before EU. Okay, MIBR, we have Falls, Reduct, and Lucid returning. Nigel coming up, I think, from T2. Perez coming over from Black Dragons. Team Liquid, Nesk, Palu, Resets, and Lagonis all returning. Volps coming over from W7M. FaZe Clan has Cyber, Souls, and Vidiking returning. Vidiking, just a recent addition for SI, but still not brand new to the roster. Handy, I think, from FaZe, and KDS coming over from, I think he was just on Tropic House, used to play on Team 1, used to actually be on FaZe way back when, but that was a little while ago now. Ninjas and Pajamas, Psycho, Wizard, Muzi, Pino, Cons, I don't think they did any roster changes. Los One, same thing. Dash, Dots, Lobin, Maya, and Rise. W7M has Herds, Keys, KZ, however you want to say it, JB92, and they brought on Felipox and Nade. Felipox coming over from MIBR, Nade from Black Dragons. Black Dragons now has Patoxy, Ion, Baseto, Live, and Stem. Tropic House is PBWS, Yex, Levy, Neskin, and STK. STK, I believe, from Furio. Magic Squad is Hates, Hornetow, GDN, Gomez, and Rare. Not the same Gomez from NA. Rare coming over from Furia. GDN played on W7M a little bit ago. And LFO Brazil is Cameraman, Daffodil, Fantasy, Raps, and Swag, with Fantasy coming over from Furia and Cameraman from FaZe. As you can see here, no Furia anymore, and a lot of their players got dispersed to other rosters, Fantasy and Rare and STK and Handy, right? And did I miss the fifth one? I'm not 100% sure. Anyways, Furia pulled out of R6, so they're not here any longer. Okay, so that does it for the rosters. Let's look at the group stage. So I'm just going to hide this really quickly. I'll show you the scores, but I don't really want to read them all off individually. So again, we'll get to, and you can actually see them over here, but I'll show the other format in a minute. They split the teams into two groups, each of 5, and this is different from NA. So if you only really follow NA, yeah, this is a little bit different. Only 8 teams in NA. Had there been 10 teams like there were, I assume, intended originally, they would have probably done the same thing. They also did this format in Europe, but in NA instead they did a full round robin, which I think probably advantages NA. One of the things people said about the reason Brazil got really good is that they played so many games because they had their regular stage, and then they also had Copa Elite 6 and maybe even some other stuff, whereas like NA and EU would just play their regular, BO1s and whatever, and then go to the major with not as much top tier experience. Of course, you can scrim all day long, but game day is a bit different. Okay, so the top 2 teams from each group will go to the bracket with a bye. The second and third place team from each group go to the bracket. I'll show the bracket in a little bit. And the 4th and 5th teams from each group go to the LCQ. So I'm not going to attempt to explain the entire structure, but the way major qualification works, there is, and sort of running separately from this, all of these teams, of course, as I just mentioned, will be feeding into various points of what I'm going to talk about. There is the open qualifier, which goes into the open qualifier playoffs, which goes into the LCQ, which is sort of just like the closed qualifier. I suppose you can use those sort of interchangeably. And then that qualifies you for the major. And the major has 3 phases or stages. I think it's phases, right? Isn't that what they're calling it? Phase 1, 2, 3. With phase 1 being a GSL style group stage, phase 2 being Swiss, right? So before they would do 4 team groups, 4 of them total at the majors, but now it is Swiss. The top 8 teams from the Swiss will advance to the bracket, which is just the same as the bracket was before. So top 8 teams play in a single elimination bracket. I think all best of 3s up to the best of 5 grand final. So again, there will be of the top 6 teams here, 3 teams will be sent to the LCQ, 1 team to phase 1, 2 teams to phase 2. But again, I'll show you how that happens. Let's just go through this really quickly. And 10 games per group, I suppose. Every team playing 4 games, so technically that's 20 games, but of course, there's 2 teams per game, so you have to divide that in 2, getting you 10. As far as surprises go, I think it was a little bit surprising was, where is it? W7M losing to Black Dragons, and then going into the last day, we had some pretty close games. Only 1 overtime before the final day, so the first 8 games, only 1 overtime. 2 overtimes to finish it off, and everything was really close. W7M were already confirmed in, but it was a pretty close race with LFO, Tropicals, Black Dragons, and maybe even MIBR. I don't recall if they were completely qualified or not. But so LFO won the first game, putting them onto 4 points and above Tropicals, who they just defeated. If Black Dragons had lost to MIBR in regulation, then LFO would be going ahead instead. So Black Dragons would have 2 fewer points because, that you'd get 0 points rather than the 2 points they actually got in this game. And instead of their round differential going up by 2, it would go down by 2 to -4. So by tiebreakers, LFO would have made it in. So a little bit of a heartbreaker for them there. And then in Group B, let's show these as well. Team Liquid dominant in this group, even more so than W7M. W7M with that 1 loss to Black Dragons. Team Liquid also had a loss, but it was a round 15 grinder against FaZe. So NiP got decimated twice, 7-1 and a 7-0. They got a win over FaZe, I think one of the bigger surprises of the group, and they had a close loss against Magic Squad, but still a loss, obviously. Los1 getting off to a bit of a tough start playing FaZe and Team Liquid, but they bounced back at the full 6 points from that point. And then here's that Liquid versus FaZe match. It goes all 15 rounds, the only max overtime game we had for LATAM groups. And, that just tends to happen between FaZe and Liquid for whatever reason. They're usually really close, really intense matches. And, again, only loss for Team Liquid was that one. And only 7-0 for LATAM was Los1 over NiP. We saw 2 of them in NA and only 1 of them over here in LATAM. Only 7-1 as well in LATAM. Okay, so that sets us up for phase 2 of stage 1. And, okay, there's a lot of phases, a lot of stages. Okay, but here we have MIBR versus Los1, winner takes on Liquid. FaZe versus Black Dragons, winner takes on W7M. Winner of these advances to the upper bracket final. And really, once you're in the upper bracket final, you're in. So they play each other still, but as far as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe this is how it works. These 2 teams both are going to stage 2. This team is going to phase 2, okay, and then this team goes to phase 1, and then the loser of this as well as the loser of each of these go to the LCQ. So okay, I guess let's just imagine it. MIBR, say they beat Los1 will go to the last chance qualifier, the close qualifier. If FaZe Clan beats Black Dragons, then Black Dragons will go to that last chance qualifier. So then MIBR would take on Liquid. Loser of this goes down here. They are now no longer able to make phase 2, except they can go to phase 1 and then make phase 2, but they can't go directly to phase 2. So yeah, Liquid would advance. Let's say they win. W7M takes on FaZe. Let's say W7M wins. So FaZe will take on MIBR down here. Winner of this goes into phase 1. Loser of this goes to the LCQ. There's also a seeding match between the loser of each of these, but it's just seeding. It doesn't really matter. Probably going to be a Mickey Mouse match by all accounts. And then at this point, we would have Liquid versus W7M. Winner qualifies for phase 2 and loser. Again, correct me if I'm wrong. I think that's how that works. And then again, the winner of this will go on to phase 1. So 2 teams into phase 2, 1 team into phase 1, 3 teams into the LCQ. The remaining 4 teams that didn't make it into the bracket, so Ninjas, Magic Squad, Tropicals, and LFO, all go into the last chance qualifiers. So they don't have to play through the regular open quals. They don't have to play through the open qualifier playoffs. And I think all of the regions, most of the regions, if not all the regions, have already played all of that stuff. So they're just going to play through the LCQ in a little bit here. Okay, so I think that covers it. I hope that's not too terribly confusing. If you have any questions, let me know. But I can also just link the Blast thing that sort of has infographics and whatever, if that helps. Probably I'll do that I'll probably do that in like the pinned comment or something. Okay, I think that does it except for stats. So let's go take a look at CGG. Right, I mostly want to look at it in the frame of reference of the teams, but we'll look at the overall leaders. Maya and Volp, the 2 best players by a pretty significant amount. Their KPRs are actually identical, and then their other stats differentiate a little bit. Both very positive on KD. Volp's almost 2.0 KD, almost 2.0 entry KD, sort of modest cost, but again, their KPRs are both very high. Survival rates for the Liquid members are in the top 5, and then 4 of the W7M members are in, looks like the top 10. Really impressive stuff from each of them. They were very dominant in the group stage. Plants, it's pretty tight. Nobody is super ahead of anyone else. Daffodil takes the top spot. Levy, Dots, Nade, GDN, Lagonis, all with a lot of plants. So 6 of the main planters from the main planter from 6 of the teams taking up the top 6 spots, I guess, and all being within 2 plants of each other. Cool stuff to see overall, I think. And then the leaders of cost, I mean, this doesn't matter too much, but Nade and Nesk. Nade being a hard support player, they tend to, if they do really well, have higher cost than the entry players, but we also have Nesk and Resets and KZ and JV, all having really high cost. So we'll look at the team stats here. Cyber taking the lead for FaZe, makes sense. He's probably the best player on that team. Maybe Souls, depending on how you're assessing it. Weird to see Souls with a low rating, but it's just so hard as a hard support, Maverick Smoke, to put up really big numbers these days. Really good entry stat for whatever reason, though. Black Dragons, they're pretty tightly clustered, all within 0.2 rating of one another. Live taking the top spot, Ion at the bottom. MIBR, similar sort of story. They're not too far apart, the top and the bottom, 0.23 separating them. On Los 1, Maya doing all of the work. 46 kills, the next highest killer on his team is Loban at 30. That's kind of crazy. And he's not even like their entry player, just only having 4 entry engagements overall, but his KPR is like way higher. Yeah, just insane. But Dots going -6, but still having 7 plants. So a lot of the hard support players actually got pretty decent ratings in LATAM this time around. On Ninjas Pajamas, I mean, they just kind of suck, especially Muzi. I guess he got good entry stats overall, and it's a really split. Nobody getting, the highest only having 10 and the lowest having 5. Yeah, that's really weird to see. But I don't know. Who knows what these guys are doing? They really need to improve or make a roster change, or I don't know. But Ninja Pajamas have not been hot for a while. On LFO, and keep in mind, these guys were quite close to making it, even if they didn't. LeBron-type performance from Fantasy, going +11, going over 2.0 KD on entry. Yeah, insane stats from him. Needed a little bit more backup, particularly probably by Swag or Cameraman. Daffodil doing pretty well. Most plants in the league, only went -6, -3 on entry, but pretty good survival, pretty good cost, pretty good performance from him, I'd say, especially on Thermite Smoke, right? And then Tropicaus, it's Neskin doing the most work, nobody else really doing much, a really big gap between him and Levy. On Magic Squad, we have Hornetau taking the lead, and his stats were like really, really good. Barring one game, he went like 1-10. He got absolutely smoked in that game, but every other game he was going crazy. I think it was after just like 2 games or something. He had like a 1.5 rating. Astronomical, not that impressive on entry, but I mean, just look at the KD, look at the KPR, really, really good stuff. And again, had he not had a really bad game, his stats would have been that much higher. Rare, GDN, Hates, all really struggling. GDN almost going double negative, and the other 2 players not too much better. Hates going very negative on the on Matt. I don't know. I was about to say Magic Squad on entry, over double negative. On Team Liquid, Volps, the player that came over from W7M, really proving how valuable he was on that team, how valuable he will be on this team, and if he ever moves to another team. Just insane stats, like I mentioned before, almost a 2.0 KD and entry KD, just good stats across the board. He has 20 of Liquid's 43 entry engagements. I didn't really watch too many of their games, honestly. Is he just their main entry, or does this just happen for some reason? Like, is he just like, out of the way, guys, like, I'm going to get these kills? Because you have Palu, Nesk, and Resets all on your team, all players that, tend to get into some entry engagements, but none of them even having 10 overall to his 20. Just, I guess he's primary entry. It just looks a little bit weird doing it on Dokkaebi, but, Dokkaebi is a strong op. And then maybe a lot of them are on defense, but if anybody knows that offhand, I guess I could have sort of looked into it, but I did not. So do let me know if you have that knowledge. And then W7M, the team that Volps was just recently on. Nade and Felipox, actually the top 2 rated players here, the 2 new players on the squad, but everyone else within 0.1 rating from top to bottom. So really good stuff from them. Nobody going negative on KD. Pretty tightly clustered as far as the entry goes. They went +1 overall. So I don't know. I saw this trend in NA as well. Just is entry not as important as it used to be? Like, do you not have to have really good entry play to be a top team, or is this just a coincidence? I don't know. Maybe there could be some analysis done on that sort of thing. But especially big props to Nade, because he's their hard breach player, top rated player, 7 plants, still went positive on KD, playing the ace and the mute, and then Felipox playing the smoke. So they're sort of splitting the 2 main supporting operators on attack and defense, whichever hard breacher and then smoke. But still, Herds and JV with a 1.14 rating. Herds sort of continuing his good performance from SI, where he was if I remember right, I think their top-rated player, KZ, was their best player by far coming into the tournament. Maybe not by far, but by a pretty significant margin, I guess. Had a pretty bad SI by his standards, and then had a good grand finals, but not enough to get his team across the line. Probably expect him to pick it up. +2 and +1 really isn't a KZ level performance, but maybe he's just cooled off a little bit. Who knows? Okay, but that's going to do it, I think. That is Brazil, and so again, I should have EU coming out tomorrow. They're probably wrapping up the last game about now, when I'm recording it, but not when you're watching this. But okay, yeah, that's going to do it for me. Leave me a like, leave me a comment, leave me a subscription, and I will catch you guys in the next video.